Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, Vladimir Zelensky will be making yet another visit to Washington, D.C. on Friday of this week. He's now becoming as frequent a guest, almost, as Benjamin Netanyahu. Um, we had the disastrous meeting in February, and then of course we had the meeting following the funeral of the Pope. That was in it was sometime in the spring. Then we
And
had
I think that was genuinely an impromptu one.
that was
You know,
yes, impromptu. Then of course we had the meeting following the Anchorage summit. But then in the meantime, there have been these phone calls. And so now there's another meeting, and he's coming with a shopping list. He's going to be coming with the things that he wants to purchase. It's made clear he wants the Patriot system, and he wants the Tomahawk missiles. And as we discussed the other day, I mean, Trump is kind of suggesting, yeah, that this may happen, though he hasn't categorically said it will happen. But the way Washington works is when you say something might happen, then chances are that it will happen. In fact, chances are that the Tomahawks have already been transferred to Ukraine. But nonetheless, we go through this motion of, well, maybe, who knows. Now, yesterday, Trump was speaking at the Oval Office, and of course, the subject of Russia and Putin came up again. And let's just take a look what he said. He's not saying anything interesting, but I do think it's worth noting the way he uses words, and you kind of wonder what he means by those words. So just take a look at this.
Look, I'm very disappointed because Vladimir and I had a very good relationship, probably still do. I don't know why he continues with this war. This war has been so bad for him. He's going into 4 years of a war that he should have won that war in 1 week. He's now going to soon be into his fourth year. He's lost 1.5 million soldiers, probably close. Certainly in terms of wounded and no legs and no arms and all the things that happen in horrible wars. It's a horrible war. I had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, but he just doesn't want to end that war. And I think it's making him look very bad. He could end it. He could end it quickly. And I have to tell you, I give credit because who would think that Ukraine could have fought Russia for 4 years to essentially a standstill? That's a war that should have never happened, but it did. But it's not making Russia look good. We'll be talking about Ukraine. Yeah, I mean, I have the president coming in on Friday, and I know what he has to say. He wants weapons. He would like to have tomahawks.
Okay, so
yeah, I mean, it's really interesting.
okay.
The way he frames all of these things. I mean, Russia should have beaten Ukraine in a week. Russia's fighting all of NATO.
Right.
All
Well,
of NATO.
but yes, but I mean, you can say it that way, but I do think it's interesting because over and over again he says something interesting. He says, um, Russia could get this war over with, tomorrow. I mean, that's how he's always going. Russia could get this over with tomorrow. Now, it's kind of interesting. What does he mean by that? I mean, because he's not saying, hey, you have to accept my ceasefire plan. He said Russia can get this war over with tomorrow. He's sort of suggesting just do it, get it over with. Whatever you need to do, just do it. You could certainly read it that way because he's not saying, oh, you
I
have to
agree.
accept my ceasefire plan.
I tend to think it's more that than anything else,
Right,
George.
and I think that's very interesting because that's how he always says it, and people interpret, oh, he's means accept the sort of an immediate.
Surrender,
Yeah,
surrender.
exactly, but that's not what he says. Russia can get this over with tomorrow, and I think that's very interesting that he frames it that way because you could look upon it that that everything that he has done over the now it's already 9 months has been a kind of a signal to Russia, get this war over with because otherwise I'm going to be sucked into this war. I'm going to get sucked in. I'm going to escalate. But he's kind of delayed escalating. I mean, month after month. I mean, he's talked. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. But generally, he hasn't done very much. But he's kind of giving a signal to Russia: if you don't wrap this up, get it over with, then I will just inevitably be sucked into this
Well,
war.
all
Of
the
course,
more
becomes
so.
very messy and dangerous for everyone.
Yeah, all the more so. Then why does he have to think about the tomahawks? I mean, if he,
Correct.
because what he wants to do is, for he doesn't, he's the peace president. Remember, George? He should be escalating
Correct.
conflicts.
Correct.
Okay, and I think also. And I can tell you the feeling here, it's really quite insulting. The perception here of the way Trump talks, so condescending and all this, and people are really tired of it. They're really tired of it. I mean, like so many other occasions, like maybe a new JCPOA, and even you and I were kind of lulled into that. Trump's got a good idea. That's right. That's good. Okay, the first ceasefire for Gaza. He's exerting himself. Good. We're on the right side. Okay, but this one now, it's just kind of it's stale. It's getting boring. How Russia fights this conflict is Russia's business. There, no one really cares what Donald Trump has to say about it. Um, the bottom line, George, is he doesn't want to be blamed.
He doesn't want to be
He
blamed.
doesn't want to be blamed.
That's true. The problem.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me interrupt myself interrupting you. I think he genuinely wants better relations with Russia, and he
I
doesn't know
think
how
it
to.
does. I absolutely do think. I mean, that's what I think. When he says, "I like Vladimir, I have good relations with Vladimir," and I still do, and I'm very disappointed in him. He says, "I'm very disappointed in him because he hasn't wrapped it up." In other words, it's yours to finish off. Now, of course, that's you said NATO's involved, and Ukraine's not an insignificant power. It's a big country. It's a territorial. It's a big country.
Well,
In
and for
population,
10
it's a big
years,
country. Yeah.
for 8 years before the special military operation was fortified by NATO. So, okay.
So he has that. You're absolutely right. I think he wants to improve relations with Russia. I think he's always seen China as the real problem. He'd love to get Russia on America's side in this confrontation with China. But the problem, I think, is that there is this NATO engine and that NATO inexorable march towards war, and they're determined to provoke a war with Russia. And I think he's sort of feeling that the way things are moving, as this war drags on, there's a good chance that there's going to be a serious war.
Well, George, you heard what Sikorsky said in the last news cycle is that this war is going to go on for 3 more years.
Right, exactly. And because if you just look at what's happened really during the past few months, I mean, it's now becoming clear that the EU is going to seize these assets. They're going to seize all these sovereign assets and then use, which is, whatever the sum involved, 160 billion, 200 billion, whatever. So it's a nice chunk of change. And they're going to use that to prop Ukraine up. So that's going to help to restore morale to Ukraine. It's going to come. They're going to have some money
I don't
from
know.
somewhere that
I don't know.
for purchasing arms. Um,
It's interesting. I think we could easily sum up the public opinion of European leaders, the EU leaders, and juxtapose it to what Ukrainians actually think. They're moving further and further apart because this is the Ukraine project. Okay, it's a
right,
Ukraine project as to defend European values, whatever that is, Western values, the European Union itself, preserve NATO, all of which has nothing to do with Ukraine's well-being. And I think morale is low, okay? And incrementally, and I mean, we don't need to revisit it,
Correct.
okay? But incrementally, and of course, George and I know you can define incremental in a number of ways, and we could probably spend hours,
Right.
but nonetheless, it's there. So, stealing Russian central bank assets, well, that looks like desperation to me because it means they don't have the money, okay? So
Right.
they
No,
have to
that
come
it
somewhere
is, but
else.
it's still it's money's money. They're going to take it,
Money's money.
and
And well,
they're going to use it.
also, George, Donald Trump, but out of our business in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, if he's going to have regime change in one form or another, and we don't know how, he's going to want to have tomahawks available and
Right.
things like that. So, there's a lot of, and then the possibility of another conflict with a war against Iran. There's a lot of things going on right now, and from I think what you and I have seen and agreed largely on is that this Ukraine project is a nuisance as far as Trump is
As far
concerned.
as Trump is concerned, but on the other hand, it's something that matters a great deal to everyone else in NATO,
Yes.
and that's why he's kind of getting himself more and more sucked into it, and I think that's why I started saying is that he's signaling to to Russia. I mean, get this over with. Because if you don't, then I think this could spiral out of control. Because all right, we've now got this. They're going to seize this money. All right, that's a nice chunk of change. This thing, these attacks on these shipping, I think that's going to continue. They're going to keep doing these boarding these things. That creates uncertainty in the whole kind of oil business. Um, and then of course there's still all the targeting of Russian energy infrastructure. I mean, that's obviously they're going to continue doing that. There was a Financial Times article about this the other day saying that this is ongoing. Ukraine is hitting Russia's energy infrastructure with American assistance. It was the Americans doing it. As you know, of course, we knew this because these are all drone and missile attacks. But clearly, the Americans are hitting the Russia's energy infrastructure. So with all of that, and then you've got the whole drone hysteria that we've talked about there. NATO's increasingly going on a war footing, and I think that's where this problem arises is that yeah, the Tomahawks is it a game changer? No, it's not a game changer, but it's just another step on the on this escalation, and that's why the longer the war goes on, the more dangerous it gets
Oh,
because
I
yeah,
agree. I agree
yeah,
with you. I agree with you because desperation engenders poor decision making. Okay. And because the Europeans obviously they want to project the confidence and unity and all that, but they don't have a lot of confidence and they don't have much. Their unity is splintered, and that's why you and I, the only two people I know of, a year ago, once Trump gets in, it's going to de-escalate. It's going to be wrapped up. No. George and I said explicitly,
right,
no, it most likely will go in the other direction,
right,
escalation. And
right.
we've been proven right
That's right.
a year later. Okay.
Yeah,
So, yeah, it's a game of nerves. But
yeah,
the Russian side has been undeterred by any of this, okay? And there's other podcasts are talking about, well, what do we think of Ankara now? Well, you and I didn't expect much from it at all. As a matter of fact, I cautioned against it. Okay, I just didn't think, just having a
right,
listening tour on both sides was going to do anything.
right.
But one thing that did come out, and it's interesting that reading the accounts of people that were there,
Yeah,
is that Trump learned a lot of things that his handlers, or at least the Russians, presented the way they see things, their perspective, a perspective that Trump had never been exposed to. So another thing we know is Keith Kellogg is in the driver's seat. It would seem to me.
right. That's right. But today there was a NATO defense ministers meeting, and Pete Hegseth was there. Let's just listen to what Hegseth said at this NATO meeting, because remember what Hegseth said right at the beginning of the this Trump second term, when he was being very scornful about NATO and Ukraine and so on. So here's Hegseth um, today.
Great to be here. And Mark mentioned it, firepower. That's what is coming. We expect it is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say, we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons transferred to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict. And if there's anything we've learned
Peace
under President Trump, is the active application of peace through strength. You get peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger. You get it when you have strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect.
Yeah, but when you point your finger down, it does.
Is doing. I believe that's what the Pearl Initiative is. So our expectation today.
What is the Pearl Initiative? Do you know what that is?
The Pearl Initiative is just precisely that Europeans purchase the weapons from the United States and then transfer them those weapons to Ukraine. Now, the reason why it was worth just watching that is essentially the Trump administration now is pursuing this is the Biden policy, and they seems to be even they're more enthusiastic and even more zealous in this endeavor than Biden was. You say, "Oh, we're just going to use this weapon in Ukraine," and that's why when Zelensky was going to show up with this with his begging bowl, he's going to get what he wants. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, but it is a little bit different from the Biden policy, and I see it as kind of a get out of free jail card. Is we sold the weapons to NATO. I mean, we that was our commitment, and we did it. Okay. Now it's up to you guys now. I think that makes it different. Okay.
well,
Because again, I think fundamentally. Trump doesn't want to be blamed, and he's creating this narrative. We supported NATO's Ukraine project. That's how he wants it phrased. Okay, now NATO it puts the focus on NATO. The Biden, he was the driving force. You know, he got the allies together. I mean, he was the remember his Warsaw speech, or this guy has to go type thing. I mean, we're not getting anything like that from the Trump administration. Okay, I just think it's a very cynical way of distancing without being saying, "Oh, we lost Ukraine."
Well, it's cynical if indeed Ukraine will be lost, if indeed Ukraine will collapse in the near term. If
Do you
that
see a good
happens,
future? Do you see a
so
good future? Do you see a good future for Ukraine?
no, I don't see a good future for Ukraine. On the other hand, I don't see this war coming to an end anytime soon. So
We're in agreement on that. We're in
that's why I
agreement.
think that means the war continues, and that means that the war will go on another 2, 3 years, and that's really the purpose. That's all. That's the whole. That's the only thing the Europeans are concerned with. To keep this war going. That's why they want this 140 or 160 billion euros of Russian money they're going to hand over to Ukraine. And that's why this whole initiative, buying weapons from the United States. I mean, the only thing that they're doing it in this way, I think, is just they want to keep Trump happy. Trump, he's a businessman and he's very preoccupied with the idea, oh, we're going to make some money on this, and this is it. And they just did it. Okay, we'll work out of the scheme, thereby we're going to pay you. They're not actually going to pay you. I mean, the Americans are going to, the money will still come from the Americans. I mean, the Europeans don't have, cash on hand to hand over to the Americans. I mean, maybe once these assets are seized on, but as things stand, they're borrowing the money from the Americans in order to buy the weapons from the Americans. And it's essentially to keep the whole endeavor going and that's all they want. They've never sought a kind of a final victory, or whatever, but they said just to keep this war going. And as things stand, I just don't see that the war is going to come to an end anytime soon. I mean, it could. I mean, you never
Well,
know.
I mean,
But as things stand, I think this is going to go on for several years.
we always have an escape route here. It's not going to end anytime soon. That's safe for us, okay? Because we don't put a deadline on it.
Right.
No, George, it's hard to disagree with you on that. I mean, the rhetoric that's coming out of Europe, bringing back conscription, which cutting back on social programs that they would have to do anyway because the an over-regulated, indebted organization, it can't go on forever. Okay, so the Ukraine project is a one in a lifetime way to reset the table. Okay, we have to do it for security because if we don't help Ukraine there, we're going to be fighting them here. Okay,
Right.
it's the same
Right.
thing over and over again. No, I think there are bigger, much broader issues. It's a way to censor. It's a way to get rid of
Yeah.
pesky politicians. It's a way to get troublesome populist parties derailed and banned. I mean, the Ukraine project has a lot of moving pieces
Right.
with it.
No, all
What
of that.
about Europe itself?
Yes. No, I think absolutely that it's in their interest to put Europe on a war footing. That gives them more and more powers, which is all that they are really concerned with. These political leaders then can see off the various populists that they're really afraid of, the populists in France, the populists in Germany, populists in the UK. Hey, we're at a war now. No time for dilly-dallying. And so, yeah, that's definitely the thing. The other aspect of it, something we talked about at the beginning, way back when the whole thing started, is there a plan afoot to weaken Russia so much that when Russia has been so weakened, NATO can make its move against Russia? In other words, that like actually attack Russia when it's been so weakened. And
I,
I mean, I know it's unlikely, but nonetheless, it's
no, well,
not
that's the
something
whole.
we can
Well,
entirely.
George, it's the whole purpose of our podcast is to think outside of the box. So I welcome the speculation. I think it's extremely unlikely, but is it impossible? Absolutely not.
No,
Because it's not impossible because what they are doing is completely irrational. And what is it? It's what's the term when you put so much money into something you can't stop? It's
right,
the
right.
sunk cost
Sunk cost fallacy. Yeah.
fallacy, and that's what they're on. They're on a
But see,
sunk.
that's right. But this is where it gets interesting. I mean, here are these people like Merz and others have said, "Oh, the British have also said this. We're going to be in war with Russia in 4 or 5 years." Now, the way they present it to the public is, of course, Russia is going to attack us in 4 or 5 years' time, which is, of course, ludicrous. Why would Russia be fighting a war with us?
Unless we attack them first.
Exactly. And that's the point. You confuse people by saying, "Oh, well, it's Russia is going to attack us," and then, of course, when you go to war, we say, "Well, we did it because Russia was about to attack us."
Well,
So,
I bet you if speaking of bets, if I said, what do you bet, George, that MI6 is already working on those plans? You would put your marker down on it for
right,
sure.
that's
I
right.
would,
And I
I
would
would
sort of,
too.
and people get very, very confused about the origins of war. How many people actually know that World War II started because Britain and France declared war on Germany? They're absolutely no, no, no. It was Hitler who started it. Hitler, Hitler attacked Britain and France. I mean, how many people actually know that was the order of events? You see, once you're in a war situation, people lose track of actually who started what.
Well,
Uh,
all the
and
more so, George, is that because of the war rhetoric that we hear in Europe, it's only a degree. It is just um, uh, the next step because we're already at war. You
right,
see what I'm saying?
right,
It won't come sudden. It'll be like, well, we're in the next stage because we've been at war for how many years now?
exactly.
Okay. And I think that that's also very much part of the whole messaging coming out of the European Union. And for the reasons I already gave, I mean, it all kind of works together, doesn't it?
Right. That's right.
In
And
that sense, it's very, very coherent. I think it's amazingly risky, and I don't think it's going to work.
extremely, very, very, very dangerous. But that's why when Merz, all these various British generals talk in terms of, well, we expect to be at war with Russia in 4 or 5 years, then you have to think, okay, Russia's not going to attack anyone. They're not going to attack Britain, and they're not going to attack Germany. So that means you are planning on going to war with Russia in 4 or 5 years. So so therefore, what's the strategy? They're going to use the next 4 or 5 years as this war, escalating this war in Ukraine against Russia, to weaken Russia so that they can then make their move then. I'm not saying this is going to happen, and of course, I agree it's unlikely. Nonetheless, I think those are the plans that are being formulated in NATO headquarters.
George, I wouldn't be surprised at all. As a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if they weren't, to
Yeah.
be honest with you. Okay, but there's always the wild card in the deck is that things are not going well with Ukraine. I mean,
Right.
and you don't have to take it from me. You can take it from Ukrainian media. Hunker down. It's going to be a cold winter. Stock up on the basics. It's not me saying this.
Right.
Okay, this is officialdom saying,
Right.
warning the public. Okay, that it. Ukraine is not, Ukraine's a little bit south of me, but at the end of the day, it's a cold winter. Okay,
Right.
I mean,
Bloody
it,
cold.
it doesn't really matter if you're in Moscow or in Kiev. It's both. They're
Right.
both cold. Okay.
Right. That's right. That's right. But the thing is that of course, things aren't going well in Ukraine. But the interesting thing is that that's not how NATO. See, NATO could always have said, "Oh, let's sue for peace." That's what you normally do. If the war's not going well, we'll sue for peace. See what get the best deal we can. But that's not what NATO has done. NATO has just chosen to continue to escalate and to whip up public hysteria. So that's why the situation is so dangerous. The longer this goes on, and the more NATO is whipping up hysteria, then I think things are going to get quite dangerous. I mean, as I said, a long
Well,
time ago, I think Russia needs to wrap it up. Just
yeah, yeah.
whatever you need to do. However
Well,
ruthless, brutal, whatever, you got to wrap it up.
George's thesis has a very interesting logic to it because um, they want a situation which they do not have to sacrifice their own people, their own troops. So, could there be a tipping point at some juncture where they'll say, "Well, let's do a preemptive strike against the Russians
Right.
because the Ukraine is teetering; it may collapse." Okay, all of these, and you and I have discussed it, and some really smart people I know discuss, at least in the beginning, is that, oh, this was a chance for Poland to snatch its
Right.
former territories, Hungary. It's just not really in their DNA right now. They're not doing that. Okay. I mean, they will speak out Poles will speak out about Poles in Ukraine. Certainly Hungarians speak out about Hungarians in Ukraine. But no, I think given the nature of what we've seen over the last few years, decapitation is what they're interested in. They want to decapitate massive cyber attacks, infrastructure, but they don't want to use their troops. That's
Right.
not because that's a lot of work.
Right.
That's an enormous amount of work. It's a lot of money, and
Right.
it's really unclear, even with all of this propaganda, would people actually say, "Nah, I don't think so." Okay, so it's cyber, it's wonder weapons and
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah, I fully believe that they're thinking about that.
Yep. Yeah, and I think so. And I think that they just want to keep this war going, keep inflicting as much pain and as damage on Russia as possible, so that in a few years' time, I mean, this is the Merz. Merz has got to pretty much spell this out when he talks about Germany becoming the dominant power in Europe, dominant military power.
Yeah, that's a real winner.
That's a
Yeah.
way exactly. He's planning a big buildup, of German German military industrial complex,
Yeah.
everything.
Get my get
I
my
don't know if it can be
get my
done
uniforms ready.
exactly. I don't know what it can be done, but you can't underestimate German ingenuity. I mean, they've always been pretty good at industry. That's been their strength in industry, chemicals, And if they really put their mind to it, they can absolutely start
If
developing
they
their a kind of a
who
military industrial complex of their
who's
own.
they? Who's they? See
The
that's
Germans. Well, you're right. I mean, that's an interesting one. But
I
the
know,
German opinion is
you,
divided,
you
and
and I
that's
have been around Germans all our lives. I mean, I've never really met one that wants to put on the
no,
jackboots in the
I haven't
uniform.
either. But
I
nonetheless,
haven't met those
but I
people.
do think it's striking.
Unless they can get migrants to do it for them.
Yeah, no, that's of course that's a possibility. They don't want to do that, but I think that they what they would like. Well, the migrants is an interesting question because that you can absolutely buy people. You can have your mercenary
Yeah,
army
instant
and buy people.
citizenship,
Yeah,
benefits, housing. Well, come
right,
on. I
right,
mean,
no,
these are tough times. These are tough times.
right,
You start putting that on the table. A lot of people are going to say yes, absolutely.
right, right. Um, but they can build some military hardware. They've known how to do that. They can absolutely. But what I think is striking, and I think that's something that we weren't expecting, who've been following Germany for these decades, is this language that you're getting from Merz, from
Yeah.
Annalena Baerbock, from Ursula von der Leyen, who's of course also a German. This is really very, very belligerent talk. This is not the
Very.
talk of, Willy Brandt, Helmut Schmidt, Helmut Kohl. They used to talk very different sort of language.
And I think, to be honest, I think you'll agree with me. I never expected this.
Yes,
I never expected this
right,
because I believe that Germany had atoned in its words, in its actions. What do people up until recently, up to 15 minutes ago, we thought of wonderful luxury pens and cars and
right,
kitchen utensils.
right.
Germans make good stuff. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
make good
No
stuff.
one's ever
Okay.
gainsaid their great industrial acumen. They've always been very good at that.
And now we have this narrative, this type of rhetoric, which is just, I never thought I would hear a German leaders utter in my lifetime. And
Right.
it's here.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
here.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So that's just another factor. So that when Merz starts talking about this, building up the German military, building up German military industry, going to put €1 trillion into it or whatever.
We're gonna get that, Fred.
I don't know where he's going to get that.
We're
I
gonna
think
get
it's going to
that,
just, I
Fred.
don't know, it's going to, I don't know, run the country into debt. But
No,
that
but that's
itself is
another
striking
thing.
that he's
But that's
talking
another
about.
thing, everyone, is that again, the fiscal conservatism of German policymakers, they were renowned.
Yeah.
I mean, those stingy Germans, okay? And the French will go into debt. Well, we'll worry about it later. And the Italians, we'll worry about it later.
Right, right, right,
Germans say, we don't.
right,
Now they do. That's a sea change.
right.
And it's such a sea change.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's a sea change, and that's part of all the things that are kind of ominous signs. Let's say they're just ominous signs in Europe. Things that that indicate that we're heading towards an escalation. That's just it's a deterioration of a situation. There doesn't seem to be any
George,
immediate movement towards some kind of resolution.
okay, you brought up something that nobody else has. Okay. So let's pull that thread a little bit further. Do you think given what you said, this kind of preemptive plan, do you think they can win? Do you think that they believe they can win?
Um, I think that they think they might. I think if they feel that if
Might,
Russia has been
might.
right, they think that if they can pull together um, enough forces, and that Russia has been now been weakened. I mean, I think they would have been fighting a war. Let's say, I mean, we're talking about the frame. What's the NATO framework? Which is for another 4 or 5 years. So by 2030, the Russia would have been fighting for 8 years.
Yeah.
I think Russia is really now weakened, demoralized.
How long
It's
was
very
how
hard to
long?
start a war.
No, no,
You
no,
start NATO attacking you, and you've been
this
fighting for
is
8 years.
this is important here. How long did the Red Army fight Nazi Germany?
Right,
Four.
it was 4 years. No, so then you got
And Stalin didn't want people to know, but the Soviet Union was exhausted.
yeah, exactly.
Was exhausted. Okay. No, what I'm just trying to do is put data points out here. Okay. Russia is I wouldn't say realigned, but it is adjusted its economy. Okay. Again, I mean, I always kind of hate to like, well, I'm here. Okay.
Right.
Well, my experience is that there is one real economic problem in Russia. It's called inflation.
That's
And
a
that,
kind of
and George, on the list of economic woes, that's always number one.
that's a problem. But the other thing is that let's say when you ask me, do they think that they can win? Well, what if they're thinking in terms of we can invade, seize territory, and they just hold on to this territory, and then just push Russia eastward. I'm not saying that's going to succeed. I'm just thinking about how they.
Like what territory? I mean, like Kaliningrad or something?
Well, Kaliningrad, that's a given. They're gonna seize that. But if think
I
about
don't see.
Western Russia.
That's where I differ with you. Did not see any elements of NATO invading the Russian homeland. Okay, that would end very, very badly, and it would end very quickly
It would
too.
it would
It would
end.
end very, very quickly. No,
Well,
I can't
the
go there.
well,
I
the
can't.
thing is that if one thinks about what is the nature of this attack, I mean, the attack will be we did it in order to anticipate Russia was planning to attack the Baltic states. We had to make our move in order to prevent this attack on the Baltic states. So Russia was planning to attack Romania, whatever. I mean, they'll come up with some excuse. Remember, this is several years down the road, so this is after a lot of propaganda, and there've been at least some preparation. I think they're going to start making military preparation, and so that's how they'll launch their attack. Say, yeah, we did it. It was a preventive war. We had to save the Baltic states, so we had to seize some territory from
Well,
Russia.
so okay, let me sure I understand this. So there would be some NATO force using one of the Baltic states to invade.
Baltic, but maybe for several different fronts that the attack will take place.
No, I tend to think that it's decapitation. Putting boots on the ground, that you'd notice it, a buildup. I think that if that would be a preventative war, Russia would prevent that. Okay, and preempt that. Okay,
Mhm.
so I see it much more cyber, missiles, satellites, all this kind of stuff. Okay,
Well,
and
that.
I think they're seriously thinking about it and they're planning it
Mm.
using a military. NATO just isn't ready. Okay, I
No, I
mean,
don't think they're ready now. I absolutely do not think that they're ready now. Um, but I think that they're going to use the next 4 or 5 years to get ready for that.
what's going to
And
happen to you? What's going to happen to Ukraine?
well, I think they're going to use Ukraine precisely as that's where they're going to start deploying their troops.
Are they going to start conscripting 14-year-olds? See that
Right.
this for me this is always the kind of the wild card here because when things but it's I always I love the quote but I can never remember Ernest Hemingway said bankruptcy starts slowly and then it becomes very
Right.
rapid. Okay. So that's always a situation here. The public opinion is not happy in Ukraine right now. Um, they still get all the rhetorical and material support from the West, but it's not doing the trick. They're not on the offensive. Okay,
No,
I don't
they're
know,
not. They're not. Yeah.
and I don't see that happening. I mean, one of the weaknesses we both have is that we don't claim, though others aren't, but claim to be military
Yeah.
experts. We're not, and we never
Right.
claimed to be. But from what I understand, the thinning of the front line and a plugging of holes. When you're plugging
Well,
holes,
you're playing host, but
you know you're in trouble. And I don't know because I'm not a military person. I don't know the inner mechanics of the Russian army. They're taking their time because they feel they can, and they're achieving the goals that they want. Okay, they're not going to do it on a timetable of others. I mean, like what Trump said, they should have won in a week. Well, yeah, I guess they could have nuked the place. Okay, I mean, but that would what would that bring about? A disaster for everyone. So that's the wild card in all of this, George, because you know. Once there's a tipping point, it can happen very, very quickly. And I'm not predicting that right
Exactly.
now.
Right. Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that could happen, but it's just that that a lot of people have been predicting that for 3 years that this will come to this
And we
tipping
have
point.
not,
No, we have not done so. So
I said
absolutely,
once it
yeah.
happens, and I'm not saying it's happening now.
Right, right, right. I think that where I mean, we discussed this. I think where the conclusion we can come to is that there are clearly NATO plans to escalate, and this could be. I think there are serious plans. I think for somewhere down the road to get more directly involved. Clearly, they also very much want to get Trump involved, and they've been doing this nonstop ever since he came to power. And that's why, I've said from the beginning, the longer this war goes on, the more dangerous it gets. I mean,
And
because
I think
just
what,
there's so
what,
many unknowns.
I think we should call it the George thesis. Okay. And so in the future, we'll refer to it. Okay. I think there's a lot there. You know why, George? Because they have no inclination to end the conflict.
No, no,
That's a point in your corner right there.
they've
Because
no
they're not looking for a way out.
They have no inclination, and they want to inflict a major defeat on Russia. And I think that they can do that. They can. This is an opportunity that comes along, once in a century, and they want to do that. They want to inflict that defeat.
So we had Napoleon, and okay, in the 19th century, you had Hitler in the 20th century, and now we're going to have the EU in the 21st
EU,
century.
NATO, yeah, yeah.
George's 100-year thing is actually prescient.
No, I think that's the thinking. I think Ursula von der Leyen doesn't think that's absolutely. Listen to any of her speeches. The rabid hatred that emanates from her against Russia and what she wants to do to this place. And we have the Kaya Kallas openly talking about how we can break up this country. I mean, these are their plans. I'm not saying they're going to succeed. Almost certainly they won't succeed. But this is the way they're thinking, and that's why it's just not a good. I mean, it's a good situation. Zelensky's coming to Washington. I don't think anything good's going to come out of this meeting.
I don't think anything one way or another is going to come out. I'm adamant in my position that Trump just doesn't want to be blamed. For the fate of Ukraine. He doesn't want that, okay? And that's why he keeps Pete Hegseth, the guy is such a piece of work. Um, you know, NATO buys the weapons from us. He's constantly, but, we're doing our best, we're doing our bit, and American weapons are the best in the world, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But, it's the guy here, the tall guy from
Hmm.
from the Netherlands.
Hmm.
He's the boss here. Okay, we're just helping. Okay, we're just helping. That's it. It keeps looking like to me. As far as the tomahawks are concerned, George and I have already discussed that. Um, again, because of launching and its size and its age and all of this, and is Trump going to sign off on American military personnel in Ukraine launching these things? I tend to doubt that. Okay,
Um,
to doubt it.
yeah, I mean well, I don't know. I mean, it could still be there. I mean,
It's not impossible, but I
yeah,
tend to doubt.
you'd have to supply, you'd have to put in the ground-based launchers, and
And the
why not
Russians
have
won't
American personnel
the
do it?
Russians won't see it.
Um, well, yeah, that's definitely yeah, that's definitely an issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you get it. Doesn't matter if they change their uniforms, okay? They're not looking at uniforms. They're looking at, this goes back to our childhood, looking at missiles on Red Square and
right.
all of this, okay? That's a really risky thing. But
But
that
I don't know. I mean, they could say it, but they
the
could
thing
use
is that
camouflage or whatever.
it's
So
something that you and I had said from the very beginning, since even during the campaign last year. Trump wants to have better relations with Russia, and he doesn't know how to get there. And I think George is right. I agree with him in the clip that he played earlier. Get it over with. But if you can't get it over with, it's bad for all of us. Okay.
right,
You know. And then this Looney Tune EU. Yeah, I'm sure they're thinking of some kind of decapitation
yeah,
attack. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Because they can't win any other means.
right, right. No, I think so. And and I think that there definitely could be. But what happens if they do launch a Tomahawk missile? And what if it just they hit Moscow? What happens then? And even
I think that there'll be more punishment for Ukraine. Because I do not see the problem with the Tomahawks, and I'm sure Trump, it's been explained to Trump, is that ATACMS can't carry a nuclear warhead.
but they
What's
don't.
the
They
other?
also don't have the range. Well,
They don't have the
Tomahawks have
range,
range.
okay? And I tend to think this is a more of a bluff than anything else, okay? And far as I understand, there aren't that many of them to go around, okay? Venezuela's on the agenda.
Right, right, right.
Israel's going to get back into action again sooner or later, and there's always the issue of Iran. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah. But let's say, I mean, if you're talking about 15, 20, even 50 Tomahawk missiles,
but will it change the outcome? No. Will it?
no, but that's yes, it's going to
Would it be a catalyst and a trigger for something else? I
right.
don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yes. Um, but that's the interesting aspect of it is that I mean, I think that you're right. I mean, if a Tomahawk missile is launched and hits Moscow, Moscow will probably respond by thumping Ukraine, but he won't respond by thumping the United States, which of course, and the United States is behind this, and that's why there's a kind of asymmetry in
Absolutely.
all of this. So the United States does this. The United States is really masterminding all of this, but it'll be Ukraine that gets thumped. And then again, that raises the issue of the wisdom of this policy of limiting the war to Ukrainian territory rather than to NATO territory. Because now it's understandable that the United States, that Russia doesn't want to hit the United States. That's a serious business. But hitting NATO territory, that seems to be that's I think is doable.
George, let's rewind all the way back to
Right,
the beginning. I said, and you guys can find it, Article 5 will be tested during this
right,
conflict. I still believe that. I still believe that. Okay. And that opens up its own can of worms because invoke Article 5. Now what do we do?
right,
Okay, it's not clear cut. I mean, the unity will be tested. We don't know what Trump's position will be on all of this.
right,
But Mr. President, you sent the Tomahawks there. Then the
right,
Russians,
right, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
It still hovers. And the longer this goes on, George is right. The greater likelihood that's going to happen.
that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So we're still in the kind of the same
Yeah.
position.
I mean, I think that, I would echo the sentiment of Donald Trump, kind of finish it off, get it done.
Get it out of the way, get it over with. Kill Zelensky, kill the top brass in Ukraine, and then it's done. Because then what are you going to do about it? I mean, because essentially you can present NATO, present Trump with a fait accompli. Yeah, we killed Zelensky. What are you going to do? And yeah, they're going to bluster and
Oh
thump fist on the table, but what are
I'm
you going
sure
to do?
there's.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
what they going to say bad things about
right.
Russia
Yeah. After all,
after all?
and you can say, look at what Israel did. Israel just simply wiped out, Hamas leadership. They wiped out Hezbollah leadership. You cheered that on. We did the same thing. So, we basically just decided to wipe out the Ukraine leadership. What are you going to do about it? You're ready now to go to war for the Ukraine leadership? I doubt it. I mean, they're going to, Trump will thunder. But if that brings the war to an end, I think then Trump then I think is off the hook because I say, yeah, well, all right, well, it's over. Good, and I masterminded this.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, but
responsible for
it's
bringing the
interesting.
war to an end.
It really, again, I've said so many times is that, I think we need a degree in psychology because Zelensky wants the tomahawks. Okay. Let's say they get them, and George is right, and they use them, and they hit Moscow. And then the Russians thump them. George likes that word.
Right,
Okay. So what did you expect to
right,
happen? And Europe, you're so supportive of this conflict. Well, your ally, your friend in Ukraine got thumped.
right.
Okay. Don't you see a kind of a logic
Right.
here?
I think that
Okay.
that's absolutely. I think that would indeed, if the Tomahawk were used and Russia responded by taking out Zelensky, the Ukrainian top brass, that would be, you say, well, that was an appropriate response. What are you going to do about it? You're really going to go to war because we killed Zelensky? I mean, because, killed all the top generals? I don't think so. And as I said, I think I don't think NATO now is ready to go to war. And Trump himself was saying, "Well, all right. I mean, yeah,
Well,
I said get it
you
out,
just
get it over with, and you got it over with."
but you just said ready to go to war. Well, they are at war with
Well,
Russia.
exactly, but they're actually
And
separating their forces.
what do
That,
you want
that,
to do? Escalate the war? That's
right,
it's up to you
right, right,
because you escalated it.
right,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's better for all involved for this thing to be wrapped up.
right.
Okay. Europe, Russia relations are not on track to be renewed for a generation. That's fine with me. And we'd be fine with Russia. It's rerouted its energy resources elsewhere. Let's get Nord Stream 2 back online. I don't think the Russians will say no. You bombed it. We're not going to. Well, why would we do that?
Right.
Okay. Why would we do that? Okay.
Okay.
But it's interesting. Venezuela is part of this too, George. All that oil.
Yeah.
You're going
No.
to be an export market.
Yeah.
Europe would be a
Yeah.
good export market
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Venezuelan oil.
Yeah.
The Ukraine plays into that as well. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
it's all anyway. George came up with a good, a fascinating thesis. I think that it's rough, it's a bit crude, but I think he's onto something, and it should be kept in mind.
Yeah. I think so.
All right,
Yep.
all
Right.
right, all right. We're gonna wrap it up here. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. I will not be available on Friday. I have a social occasion to attend. It's the 20th anniversary of you know what, and I'll see George on Sunday.
Exactly. Okay, so have fun at your party. I'm sure you will, and I'm sure Gagglers wish you all the best for the
Full
party.
report on Monday.
Exactly, full report. And then in the meantime, the dogs are saying, "Well, why are we at the party? I mean, we've done more to lift not just the Gaggle but RT than anyone else.
They've been
We
they've
should
been
be there."
they've been with me almost all the time. I believe
Exactly.
some.
Sipping on the cocktails, sipping on the dry martinis.
Could you imagine?
So, yeah, the dry martinis. So,
Oh,
but
no pets allowed.
no, oh no, that's not okay. Well,
A whole list of things. No firearms and no chemical weapons. They actually wrote it out. I couldn't believe it. There's a whole list of things you can't bring in.
well, I guess he'll probably expect you to bring back a dried martini for him. Was at least something. Yeah,
With two olives. With two olives.
exactly, or scotch or something like that. But then I think, well, and if I don't get a scotch or a dry martini, then something has to be put into that drop box where we put we put all of our gains, for all the work that we've put in for all of these years, that give us this, the tip jar needs to be kept filled up. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. And the more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology, and the more we can keep the dogs, at least a little bit less disgruntled about not being invited to this cocktail party. So remember,
keeping them at bay. Yes.
exactly. Remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.